Okay, we are live again, 9:11 p.m. Mountain Time, 3/3/2024. Any major psyops today? I can't believe they would miss it. This is Full Red Pill by Shill Scanner. Full Red Pill or GTFO. And you can get that and other tracks. Just go to ips.monster. And I will be making all of the archives, including music we play routinely, available through links or downloads. And I have links to the artists themselves. We're waiting for a few more people to show up. We were live about 3 hours ago with Fakeologist. We did a little bit of a catch up, and I saw a lot of you there. And we'll be doing more of that in the future. I'd been out for a couple of weeks at the beginning of last month, hot skull, but it cooled down. I was watching this Netflix show called Griselda today, and it had some interesting symbolism I thought I'd point out. There's a scene where this character is on peyote. He's out in the desert, and he's watching a scorpion crawl around his hand, and he's wearing a watch. And he's talking about time being non-linear, like a never-ending circle that few people can break. But I'd already kind of noted this character because he had a copy of a book in his car called Labyrinths, which I had looked up. And anyway, I wanted to get to the symbolism here of the scorpion as it relates to time and cycles and breaking the cycle of time. In this tarot symbolism, the death card is associated with Scorpio. You know that they all have their astrological connections, and death is Scorpio. And this card depicts a skeletal reaper with a sickle, and it represents the end of a cycle, but simultaneously it represents the beginning of the next one. Death followed by a new beginning, another lap on the marathon. So the idea here is that the sickle is correlated with the end of time or your end of your life. And so you have this idea of course, the harvest and the reaper. And this is mostly an agrarian thing, and it's not a coincidence. It's in Scorpio in the fall. But you have a connection between cycles of time, or he refers to it here as a circle, and the sickle being the end slash beginning point. And the scorpion is of particular interest. Its tail is like a sickle, but also it's largely a symbol of death, but also it's a symbol of rebirth. They very dramatically shed their exoskeletons. And if you can look at the exoskeleton as a metaphor for the false self or the persona that one takes on, the ego that is there without a full awareness of, for example, the higher states of consciousness, maybe one's soul is somewhat divorced from the body. There's some kind of signal attenuation there. And you get too attached to the material realm, and it creates this concept that might be limiting to one's spiritual growth. So this card would represent the end of a cycle, the end of a limiting concept or limiting belief, which is what the exoskeleton, you outgrow it. And that's kind of what that symbolizes as well. And I looked up the book Labyrinths by an author named Borges, and it contains a whole lot of short stories. And one is called The Garden of Forking Paths. And it has the idea, quote, that infinite realities are created as people face decision points. Each decision creates a new path, and the outcomes of those decisions create more opportunities for choices to split into their own paths. Which kind of tails along with a conversation I had with a caller a few days ago. And we were talking about the meaning of intention, synchronicity, and the realms of possibility. But interestingly, the copy that I got it from the library here, has an introduction by William Gibson, who wrote the Sprawl trilogy, Neuromancer, Mona Lisa Overdrive, and I don't know if it's widely considered to be the case, but I've always thought that this was the basis for the Matrix. Oh yeah, Count Zero. There's this series, it's a cyberpunk series by William Gibson that has all the elements of the characters from the film of The Matrix. But it's not usually cited as the source, but I would say it is the source. My point being, the author of the Sprawl trilogy, is the one who, I think he wrote Johnny Mnemonic as well with Keanu Reeves. But anyway, he wrote the intro, which I thought was kind of telling because, of course, it's a book that confronts things about the nature of reality, non linear concepts of time. So that was interesting. But beyond that, the movie Griselda, it's Netflix. And like everything in Netflix, it has to have some kind of propaganda messaging. And it's about a godmother, a female mob boss. And this is definitely focusing on rampant sexism, which in this movie, and this takes place like in the 70s, it exists in the criminal underground and among law enforcement. But Griselda's an anti hero. She's definitely an anti hero, and she's representative of Barbie feminism. Barbie feminism, Ken is superfluous, they dash the heads of their babies on the rocks, that whole thing. But she rises out of prostitution, kills her weak husband, keeps her pregnancy secret from her man, battles sexist drug lords, and turns down a massive buyout to assert herself as a woman in a man's world. Meanwhile, the only cop in Homicide is fighting sexist law enforcement as she pursues the female mob boss, and nobody believes her that a female could be a mob boss. So there's that whole element to the program. And one more point, I suspect this series is predictive programming for future President Kamala Harris. It has all those elements, and the storyline kind of tracks of, someone who's not taken seriously, laughed at, mocked, maybe started out in some place, but rose up on her own. It's called Griselda, but again, it just had this interesting reference to a book that I had to look up, and the character's conversation about death while wearing or time, while wearing a watch with a scorpion crawling on his hand, has all the main components of the death card intro symbolism. And recently we were talking about the symbolism of the devil, who is not Baphomet, and Baphomet is not the devil, and Baphomet is not a demon. Just let Cat Williams and Joe Rogan got that wrong. All right, we're joined by Osher, Elephant Tusks, Ears Up, Frank Murr, Diana South, John Francis, Restream Bot, and more. Again, notifications just went out. We'll see people showing up. Phones will be on starting tomorrow. I get paid at midnight. I appreciate everybody who supports the channel via ips.monster or Patreon. Tomorrow morning, I will be resubscribing to Skype for another 3-month period. I just had to set up that payment for midnight tonight, so no big deal. We'll have phones on tomorrow, and we are going to be live early tomorrow morning, followed by a live chat again in Discord. It went well last time, and I think it will be a staple feature from here on out. So if you want to be involved in that, you just have to show up in the mornings, and there will be a link put in the chat for you to jump into Discord if you're not already there. All right, let's see what else we have today. Elon Musk posted this, and this is so strange. We keep noticing how it seems like this guy is saying things that seem to be somewhat connected or related to what we talk about. He talked about how mainstream mediated or legacy media people live in an alternate reality. He said, I can't believe people still think the news is real. LOL. Laughing emoji. And look, and I also want to point out, I think it's weird when people use laughing emojis. I mean, I understand responding with one, but if you're writing and then you add in laughing emojis, it doesn't make the tweet funnier. It makes it annoying, in my opinion. But he wrote down, heck of a coincidence laughing emoji, and it's a picture of him as a child, Elon Musk, born 69 days after 420. We've been talking about the significance of time periods between dates like gematria calculators often having interesting correspondences but having no predictive value. Well, this is interesting. This is highly suggestive of a world stage character who just happened to be written about before he was born in Wernher von Braun's book, Mars, A Technical Tale, about the Elon who colonizes Mars. But Musk is heavily associated with the number 42, as are all the space popes. They all use that number. I mean, even Richard Branson, his whole thing is about the goddess, Virgo, Virgin. And we could go into that, the symbolism there. It's pretty lewd. You wouldn't think of a rocket launch as lewd unless you knew what it was really expressing ritualistically. Mystery Babylon fertility cult stuff. But it's especially true with Richard Branson's ship, his plane. But anyway, he went to space on the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling, which was 9 days before Jeff Bezos launched. And that was, of course, back in 2021. But the 42 thing, it's consistent throughout the space program. They constantly reference it. And it's not just from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, it's actually a sigil. You put the 4 and 2 together, and you get the astrological glyph of Saturn, which is what we're really looking at here. But born 69 days after that, and the number 69 in the occult has a great deal of significance, and it has a lot to do with, well, a couple of things. One, it's sort of a reference to Cancer, the summer solstice. But there's another element to it if you go into Crowley's Book of Lies, which, again, like everything else with the space program, it has a deeper meaning, which we may get into if we want to get into Crowley, Thelema, and what space sex really means. Because it's all an allegory for higher states of consciousness. And they're not really higher than you. They're not really elevated. They're not up there in space. It's all just an allegory. And by the way, outer space is fake. But it's really just a metaphor for describing inner space. Because the space program's objective has always been to give you a world view, therefore, controlling your inner space, your mind. NASA's mind control. Stanley Kubrick didn't just help fake the moon landing, he helped fake the JFK assassination, moon landing, 9/11. His fingerprints are all over COVID. Probably half a dozen or more major league psyops can be traced directly to not just Kubrick, but the Kubrick department, where the metascriptors all work. Newsbenders Central. And we do live in a news-bent reality. And if you understand the implications of that, you will never overreact to the news again because you will know it's not real time. You'll know that it's been prefabricated, written in advance. There's no reason to react to it. You can respond, acknowledge it, laugh at it, comment on it, critique it, but react? Why? It was written in advance. The elite write the history, they act it out on the world stage like a reality TV show when it comes to major events. They write the history, they implement it. Whatever we say, eventually it's going to be burned. They will burn our books, they will delete our content. We have no say. History is his story. Who is he, Big Brother? All right, let's see what else we have going on. Multi-C0 has dropped into the chat. All right, let's continue down my minds. If you want to, I appreciate the support very much, by the way. In fact, if it wasn't for the support of our listeners, not just the financial, but also the commentary, this think tank wouldn't be what it is. It's not just me. I couldn't do this in a vacuum. What we're looking at here, I would describe it as a massive puzzle. We're looking at this script, and it takes not only just a lot of hands on deck, but a lot of different perspectives. We've had a lot of insightful people who have specific insights from whatever career field they happen to be from or in. I mean, for me, I think my experience with dead bodies, corpses at death scenes, autopsies, embalmings, all of that really, and also being around the bereaved while in the death care profession, has given me some insights when it comes to atrocity propaganda. It just doesn't work on me. I think similarly, my experience in the military has convinced me of really the efficacy of belief. Armies of believers. They all believe, like, think about it. Every single person in the army believes in every single weapon of mass destruction. They believe in all the doomsday scenarios they drill for. That's an army of believers. Just replace nuke with angry, vengeful God. And imagine them being believers in this angry, vengeful God. We're just talking about a belief system, and the believers themselves are what maintain it as a status quo. It's a consensus-based reality. So every single person in the military who believes in the fake thing is helping to fake it into existence. It may as well exist. And we know this from experience. Those of us who survived the end of the world which was 2020. It ended. But the meaning of death being a cycle is that it's not the end. There is no end of the world in the sense that it stops. It just moves on to the next season. Been getting into way too many debates with chemtrailers. I just sort of gave up on it today. I'm like, all right, fine. Chemtrails give you AIDS. Mask up. And I had AI generate for me something. It's an AIDS cloud with little red ribbons falling from the sky, and everybody's masking up because they don't want to catch AIDS from the chemtrails cloud. I mean, that's how absurd it's become. All right, let's move on. I don't want to hyper focus on it, but there's a reason for it. And the reason for this is that we have to attack the orthodoxies within Trutherville first. We have to use the think tank, aim the turrets at the guardrails, and blow them up. Create the exodus from Trutherville to the off-world stage parallel media. Once we have 10,000 people in the parallel media ideological quarantine, then we can go to war with the mainstream. But the Trutherville as it is right now, presently, it's in no condition to wage war with the MSM. It's just too full well, it's incoherent, for one thing. But there's too many agendas and it's too immersed in the political horseshoe. And most of them are probably following Trump over a cliff. So I'm just suggesting that if you want to have any real effect as far as unveiling the truth, tearing down deceptions, maybe even, poking a finger in Big Brother's eye, you're not going to do it by trying to organize the mental asylum full of red pill addicts. You're going to have to go past that and come out here to where skepticism is, well, where it's platformed, because there is no platform for skepticism. There's no internal skepticism within the mainstream or MSM plus worldviews. And people may not like that. They may want to build a bridge or, oh, you just got to drop seeds, plant seeds, wake them up little by little. And no, that's not how this works. The red pill awakening is a false awakening that draws people deeper into the alt reality game. Same thing with wokeism. The only, quote, awakening, the only, I think, return to objective reality is exiting every basic premise and not even entering into any one of their bifurcated psyops, except as an observer. But to be an activist in this is folly. All right, let's see what we have here. Going through your comments. Thank you for joining Skyfish from DLive. Ms. L says not everyone's going to wake up. Maybe they're not supposed to. Well, here's the thing. A lot of people are peer pressured. I think that you grow up, you go through school, and it's basically teaching you not to get too far out of line because everybody will laugh at you. It's teaching you to conform, teaching you to respond to the mob and be sensitive to it and to be part of it. And there may be a lot of people in this red pill arena who are very close because they're skeptical. They don't trust the media, and the default position for people who see through media lies is to jump into the alt media because there is no platform for skepticism of media itself. And that's what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about exiting mediation and taking control over one's mind, becoming the final arbiter of what you believe and rejecting their belief systems. They're offering you belief systems. You can be mainstream, which is chill. You're apathetic. You believe everything, but you don't care. You're peaceful. Then you have red pill, which is an agitated version, and then you have woke. If you lean left, same thing. But there is no platform for people who want to opt out of the mediation itself. You're not supposed to become a non-believer. Non-believers don't exist in this world, except behind the scenes, the perps, the ones behind the monolithic mind control, the PSYOP entertainment complex. And outside of that, the only ones in the know are those of us who've gone far beyond the fringe and jumped over the guardrails, despite the protests of those in Trutherville who want to keep everybody in like crabs in a bucket. They get really mad when you go against their orthodoxies, which is why we have to, because those are planted there, is what I'm saying. We have to basically divorce from the world stage and recognize it as a construct in enough numbers that we can overcome a lot of the fear people have when it comes to betraying the consensus. That's when I think this will snowball. You kind of have to take away the sense of a consequence for going against the grain by taking a stand. And a lot of people are, again, somewhat cowards, and you can't really blame them or fault them for it. We'll take them. If they're willing to make that final leap, and it is something of it's a philosophical leap, it's a paradigm shift. But like, do we have to continue to act like space is real if we know it's not? No. Do we have to pretend to care about fake dead people or fake issues? And the whole point of it is that we may not care, but we're drowned out because we're not platformed. We're like, oh, we don't care, this is fake or this is manipulation, but everybody else goes with it, or they go with it halfway. Like it's a false flag thing. Like truthers are like, yeah, Vegas was real, but it was done by black helicopters. I'm sorry, but that's no closer to the truth than the mainstream version. And we don't have evidence that it happened. But there isn't a large group of people who know this to be true, who are aggregating and who are separate from the majority who go with the watered down version of the mainstream. But we're going to fix that very soon. Let's see what else we have here. Elephant Tusk says, if we live two reality lives, individual and consensus, where does one start / end and the other begin? Well, the thing is, we have a worldview that's consensusly, it's like an agreed upon delusion, as they said in Leave the World Behind. We all agree on certain things. And the big agreements are the things that we take for granted and we fight over all these other things. But I'm saying some of these big agreements need to be challenged. But as far as these two worlds not matching up, we're increasingly seeing it possible to live in conflicting realities. The fact is that this world stage itself, when you accept the premise of the mainstream as an authority, you already split into two realities, left or right. And they have two versions of reality that shouldn't be able to exist at the same time, but they do. And that's how fake a lot of these issues are. It's open to interpretation. In fact, I think Cubstar posted it's like choose your own reality. As long as it's one of the two. You never get an opt-out. You never get it. That's kind of fascinating, actually. With Fakeologists, I was talking about the Mandela effect and how you're only offered a binary, but there's no opt-out. Jif, Jiffy, no, I don't remember. And that's because they're forcing you to choose, or rather, they're coercing you to make a choice because both of them put you on the same sheet. It doesn't matter. My point of it is they limit the context, but they don't give you an opt-out. As long as you believe, it doesn't matter. And it's the same thing with the media. You can be mainstream, you can be alternative, but there's no platform for neither, for not believing at all. But there are many people who don't believe either. But again, they're scattered, drowned out. And 2020, there wasn't a way to mobilize it. I thought 2020 would do it, but you had the controlled opposition antis come out like Pied Pipers, and they created a mass out of all the reactions, the anti to the mainstream version. And the antis are so big, and it's such a big umbrella that it's useless. And that's been my point. You can't wake everybody up, but wake them up to like the lowest common denominator. Like you can't mix people who believe in, for example, nukes with the people who know nukes are fake, and then critique the mainstream in the same way. That's what I mean by ideological purity. We have to separate believers from knowers, which is more of an agnostic thing. And again, this is a very important thing for now in terms of drawing a line, making these distinctions obvious, and even widening the rift with debate. And that's why I've been challenging these chemtrail believers on Twitter. Many of them, because they're pushing a controlled opposition line, have huge followings. So they got 1 billion followers, and they post a picture of a cirrus cloud and how scared they are of it. And I'm like, wow. Like that's the type of message that they want getting out there. It's getting amplified. Okay, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on that necessarily, but I just wanted to point out a few things about it. Like Angry Nick says, remember this so well, fond memories. We need to take out these lunatics, the globalist scum, and the sky bastards, and take back our beautiful skies. Now he's posting a picture of a blue sky, like a, I don't know, yellow sun from a children's cartoon drawing or something. They all seem to believe, like here it is, Dr. Naomi Wolf, and this is how you know it's a shield movement. Dr. Naomi Wolf is a high-level guardrail pusher. She says, "Who remembers when the sun was golden, not silvery? When the sky was deep, rich blue, not pale, milky blue. When robust, gorgeous clouds were everywhere, crispy in the sky, when the sky was not plagued with weird streaks, blocking the sun, creating bizarre sundogs, and turning into a spitty gray, unmoving cloud cover with drizzle the next day." This is Dr. Naomi Wolf, and she's falling for all the tricks, or she's a trickster. I mean, what is it? It has to be one or the other. This person is either incapable of recognizing every single logical fallacy she brought up, or she's a propagandist. And I would lean towards propagandist because I learned something today, or I really realized something. The chemtrail industry, the chemtrail narrative thing, whatever you want to call this, belief system, it's as big as climate change. The climate change, quote, science is targeting the left, and they blame the right for causing it. They're not targeting the right, they're aiming at the left. And the chemtrail stuff is targeting the right. It's targeting conspiracy theorists. They don't aim that at the left. And the chemtrails is blamed on the left. So it's another one of these bifurcated psyops. And I have this objective here of breaking it down into its component parts, describing how it works, and refuting every attempt at refuting what I'm saying, because a lot of people are trying. And then at the end of it, I think we can, clear the air. The whole point of this is if enough people realize that this is a fraud being perpetrated on Trutherville, they recognize it's just more fear porn and that they've been plugged into it. We may have a lot of people defecting and maybe taking a closer look at the premise of skepticism first. Being an auto believer doesn't help you. Automatically default believing whatever's televised is actually not necessary either. To me, it's just the state religion. Here's another example. Arguments from ignorance. And this is a fallacy. Arguments from ignorance are bad faith questions where they say, look, I don't know what caused that. They pretend not to know. Or they don't know even though it's knowable. They pretend it's not knowable by asking a bad faith question. And it's like, oh, nobody knows. No. So he says, if chemtrails aren't real, heavy metal, poisons, etc., then what are they? And why do they remain in the sky for hours? So is he not aware that this question has answers? Hey, if these aren't heavy metals and poisons, then what are they? It's 2024. You think you're the first person to raise that question that nobody's asked? That nobody's done the research? This is not a valid question. It's just not. He's acting mystified. And this is an argument from ignorance. And you can sacrifice your credibility on this hill if you want to. I don't know why anybody would. My response was the fact you're asking the question means you haven't researched it. You chemtrailers are always telling people just look up or look up the patents, research for yourself. So they always push that burden of proof, but they never research what they claim doesn't exist. If they're not willing to research contrails and confront that first, because look, contrails not only existed before chemtrail theory, but contrails were studied and have been studied and are still studied for decades by the Air Force because they needed to know how to predict these so they could avoid giving away locations. They have charts for this. But what's more, I found a website where they show you real time in the US or where you are in the world the likelihood of condensation trails forming. So this person, rained out rant, said to me, because I said chemtrails don't exist. He said they're not chemtrails, they're stratospheric aerosol injections. Get it proper. But that's moving the goalpost, which they always do as well. This person says it doesn't matter what jargon you use, The parasite class is spraying us like bugs, whatever you call it. Again, what are they spraying from? And calling it a spray, again, is loading the question. You know, what poisons are they dumping on us? That's not a valid question. It's loading the question. You know, what kind of aids are they putting in the chemtrails? I'm gonna go ask people. I'm gonna go to city council, ask them, hey, what kinds of viruses are they putting in the chemtrails? Because I think, or what kind of viruses are they putting in the water? You know, you're loading the question with whatever you want to add in there, and that's not a valid way of advancing an argument. You should say, what is the trail? What is the cause? Oh, look, there's 60 years of research on the matter. It's almost like this is planted there to make people easy to discredit. Some people will say, oh, look, well, cloud seeding exists. Right, well, cloud seeding has nothing to do with chemtrails. And again, here's the main thing. Chemtrail theory was a trick to get non-leftists to accept the premise of anthropogenic climate change, and they succeeded. If you buy into, quote, geoengineering, you bought the premise of anthropogenic climate change. It's like, shame on you. Chemtrail Gretaism is an unforgivable sin because it aligns you with everything that the WEF wants you to think. So here's a few graphics I created. Hashtag Skyphobia. Cirrus clouds are scary, and that's a chicken. This one is a man in a chicken suit crying beneath a lot of trails. People are like, oh, they form grids. Are you scared of grids now? You know, your streets are grids. So why would airplanes go into grids? Maybe it's because the airports don't move and they have established flight paths connecting these airports, which would mean something like, I don't know, lines in the sky, and if they persist, perhaps crossing. Like these flight paths explain it. But again, these are cirrus clouds that are made of ice. And these individuals who are constantly hyping up the fear of these things are just as bad as people saying the ocean levels are rising. That's the same level of hysteria. And I don't think it's something that people should continue to stand by unless they, I don't know, want to just step up and put on a mask. You want to tell me you're afraid of the chemicals being dumped from the sky onto your head? Put on a mask, or I'm not going to take you seriously. Or you're just really brave, but aren't you worried about chemtrail lung? So Nathaniel Dibben said to me, well, go ahead and check Dubai's weather program and play around with that. Okay, well, is their weather program using commercial airlines? But again, cloud seeding, making snow on slopes, we're not talking about that. This is a misdirection. Now, another thing here, this is what I mean by arguments from ignorance, because you can only use this as long as people don't do any research. When a chemtrail believer acts like contrails aren't a well understood phenomenon, they're kind of playing dumb. It would be like somebody who believes in Bigfoot looking at a buck rub, you know, where they scrape the tree, and say, well, if there's no Bigfoot, then explain that. And it's like, well, that's from a deer. And they'd be like, well, you're a shill working for the forest industry trying to hide the existence of Bigfoot. Like that might work in a small community of Bigfoot believers, but eventually the facts are going to get out. And contrails are no more mysterious than buck rubs. And believing in chemtrails is just as unsupportable as believing in Bigfoot. Lean Dion says it's a ridiculous notion that they're openly poisoning everybody from the sky. And before finding auto hoaxing, I took it as a truth or given. Yeah, same here. I didn't take it as a given necessarily, but I didn't automatically have a way to debunk it, and it didn't seem unbelievable. And the reason it didn't seem unbelievable is because of the appeal to motive fallacy. If you know there are bad guys who are lying, manipulating, psyoping the heck out of the population, then why wouldn't they spray you like insects? Like it seems to make sense, but that's logically fallacious and they play into it and it taps into paranoia, which may or may not be justified. G says, WTF are you talking about? Wow. We're talking about right wing climate change, aka chemtrails, which don't exist. Contrails do exist. But chemtrail believers don't want to believe in contrails because it's the official truth. It's their official talking point. It's contrails, not chemtrails. And they're reactively anti. But what happens if the mainstream news says the sky is blue? Are you going to then revolt against that? Liars don't lie with every breath. They lie 1% of the time if they're good. The rest of the time they're telling the truth to gain your trust, but it's the 1% that matters when it comes to their strategic lying. Commenter says the answer to life and the universe and everything is not 42, it's 3. Tell that to Musk. Look, in 2013, I saw ISS footage on TV. And I remember it clearly. The giant screen, the roommates with their hookah thing, and they're watching the space thing. I looked at it, I kind of shrugged and walked out of the room unimpressed, but I didn't know it was fake. It looked kind of fake, but I didn't process it as fake. But looking back, I should have known it was fake. At the time, I had been years into editing Final Cut Pro, every sort of filter, special effect. I was really trying to stay with the cutting edge on this stuff, which is another area of my own personal background that lends to deconstructing fakery on TV, specifically NASA. Joined by Dwayne Garrett. Thanks for joining. This is Sunday night, 3/3/2024, 33rd anniversary of the night that Rodney King got whacked 33 times over the course of 1 minute and 19 seconds. It's true. You can read it on Wikipedia. NFL tight end prospect Tip Riemann doesn't believe in birds. Did you hear this? I saw this one, and look, birds are a fake is a fake conspiracy to mock the people who know that a lot of stuff in the news is fake. And it was organized by a lot of the actors that did the whole Parkland production. But I went over to this site to read the article, and it's actually pretty decent. The arguments, this is someone who has an interesting assessment over Tyler Owens, because it's not really about the birds being fake. He's really talking about, because I think that was a joke. Have you ever seen a baby pigeon? He asked reporters. How do we know that power lines aren't charging stations for pigeons? This is from again, it's a satirical birds aren't real movement, but this is a response to Tyler Owens, who had actually said that he didn't believe in planets or space. Let me play a few clips here. This is from Outkick.
I was having some fun with this. A NFL draftee potential, name is Taylor Owens, I believe from Texas Tech, said in his interview today that he doesn't believe in space or other planets, that he is a flat earther, and they make a lot of good arguments. Funny. Is it so dumb that you would be unwilling to draft him?
So he rambles on for about 3 minutes, and I think he's pretty open-minded about it, very fair-minded, and he kind of makes the point that it's really all about talent and performance on the field. And he doesn't care how crazy of an idea a person believes as long as they perform well. However, if there were two players that were equally good, he would go with the non-flat earther. That's kind of his take.
Caleb Williams said it. I'd put in the tape, and I'd watch him play at USC. I'd probably still draft him. I don't know that there is an opinion, even one that is clearly wrong, even one that is crazy, that is so dumb that I would be unwilling to draft. It's a fun debate. You and your buddies are sitting around, and it is leap day.
Anyway, some draft pick got his name in the headlines by saying that he thought the Earth. He didn't even say the Earth was flat. He said a lot of I don't know. What he said was that he didn't believe in space. He's a non-believer. And it's perfectly defensible. I don't believe what liars tell me. I don't believe cartoons are real. I don't believe religious mythology, and I look at the cartoon art of the Church of Nasatology, and it just doesn't strike me as real. I go into churches, I see murals of angels. I don't believe those things are real. And I would argue that Nasatology's imagery is tantamount to religious art, and they've constructed a neo heaven, a universal heaven that every person of faith, no matter what religion they are, Jew, Christian, Muslim, or even atheists, non religious people, believe in this new heaven. That's the whole point of the space program. It's mind control, it's worldview warfare, it's giving you your worldview, but it's also a replacement religion. Mass media has supplanted and replaced religion, but the concept of heaven and salvation, escape from this world, mankind's future destiny, it's all among the stars. It's all in space. Space is the new heaven, no different than the old archaic worldviews, except now the obelisks fly to heaven. They don't merely symbolize resurrection, they literally fly you up there. All right, there was a video put out today. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I just
wanted to create
I
your
just
own
want
internet.
to basically make a point about their title. It's by Truth Stream Media. And Truth Stream Media is pointing out how Alicia Keys was kind of off key. Her voice cracked at the Super Bowl, but it was changed. They used AI to fix it. They kind of patched it over really quick, and a lot of people didn't know. And they're saying it's, more or less an example of how the Mandela effect gets created. And I completely disagree with that whole assessment.
Edit reality in real time and how that could go horribly dystopically wrong. And it feels like we have to be that balancing voice because the people who are making these things a lot of times keep acting like having radical optimism about everything isn't just some cute costume for being mind-blowingly naive.
Okay, anyway, they kind of fear porn the issue, but the fact that they fixed it's because they were being polite, I guess, and delivering the best product they could. I don't know whether it's even unethical, but this is not how Mandela effects are created. Mandela effects are created by the person who is asking the interviewee if they're Mandela affected. And the way that they're creating the Mandela effect is by prompting and imagining to go along with the recollection and convince them that that prompted recollection or that prompted imagining is a recollection and that now it's ambiguous. You get them to doubt the reality, and through retroactively interfering with that memory, they're able to implant something, a suggestion, and get them to believe in this alternate reality. The Mandela effect exists, but it's not shifting realities, it's gaslighting and getting people to answer to a false binary. And then, of course, their cognitive bias and their desire to fit in with a cool new club play into it. But it's a cult. That's how Mandela effects are created. They're not created with real props in the world. It's actually a misconception. It's a clever one. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Here's an image that was posted today. Someone said it's a weather weapon. I said, no, it's not a weather weapon. It's a cirrus cloud. High altitude, thin, wispy, composed of ice crystals. You could literally bottle up chemtrails and drink them. It's better than your tap. I did come across a lot of dishonest people. Like this guy says, you think a commercial jet does this? LOL, laugh emoji, laugh emoji, laugh emoji. He laughed emoji there because, of course, it's an appeal to ridicule. It's funny that I would say a commercial jet would make that trail. Right, okay, so he presented this video out of context as evidence that I was wrong. He's like, here you go. So I took a screen cap, right click, Google search, found the source of it. It's a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. The jet has been identified. Again, this was somebody lying to convince me that these things exist. And why? Why do they have to lie? That's kind of been my question for some time. All right, let's continue here. Going through your comments. Isabel N says, all that fake bird crap in my car is super annoying. Yeah, the birds are fake thing had a lot of media attention, which they wouldn't have received if they weren't plugged into the mainstream media, PSYOP entertainment complex, purposefully misdirecting people. Like they don't want people to hear directly from the source why I don't believe in fill in the blank mass shooting. They don't want to hear it. They want to suggest that you're doing it for ulterior motives, or you're because you're a Second Amendment radical, you're an AR-15 gun fetishist, which is not the case. But atrocity propaganda exists, and propaganda, perception management, psychological operations, yeah, these are all within the purview of mainstream media, including movie special effects. And there's no meaningful distinction between media, Hollywood, entertainment. These are all a substrate of just mind control, which is global in scale. And it's centralized. All right, moving on here. And yeah, chemtrails is a uniform belief in Trutherville. That's why we're deconstructing it. And if you haven't seen this, you have to go to timosman.blog and subscribe. I'd recommend you. I should probably print this as a poster. In fact, I will put that on my to-do list. I created this chart to describe or to point out where you are in the real world, or if you're in the real world, or if you exist in the screened reality. We can all agree that people in doomsday bunkers who believe the world is about to end are in an alternate reality. In 2020, we existed in an alternate reality game. Whether you believed or not, you had to play along, you had to wear the costume. The screened reality is the reality as processed or as aligned with the consensus agreed internalized worldview. But this can only be achieved if you believe whatever that monolithic filter is. It could be a Bible, a holy book. It could be Dianetics, whatever everybody agrees upon as this is our reality filter. This tells us the story of where we come from, where we're going, and how it is. My point being is that the monolithic worldview filter right now is the mainstream media. The mainstream media is the version of reality that is augmented with psyops, propaganda, prefabricated history, media fakery, and consensus lies. But the consensus lies, as in the ones they all agree upon, the designated truths. And the mainstream media believers are largely happy and apathetic. Those who fall into the category of wokeism, or left-wing alt media, they're deeper. They still believe in the screened reality, but they're not apathetic, they're active. They're mad about what they see in the psyops, in the media fakery. They're so mad that they get woke. And they're like, why are those people sleeping? We're awake, we're woke. The thing is, the woke worldview is a subset of the mainstream. It just adds on to it. It's what I call MSM plus. But if you lean right and you're also not predisposed to apathy and you want to wake up, you just follow the rabbit trails, you find your red pill dealer, and you get hooked. And you become a right-wing alt media believer in conspiracy theories. And you're basically still in the mainstream box, but now you believe there's more to the story. Now you're afraid of cirrus clouds. Now you're afraid of the deep state vampires. And at this point, you're the opposite side of the political spectrum, but you're the equivalent of a woke. The red pill awakening is false. Now, on the other side of the filter, you have PSYOP operatives, controlled opposition agents, actors, propagandists, and they would be at different levels of in the know. I don't think they would all be fully apprised of how fake everything is. The people who take part in fake shootings would have no idea about fake space. I don't know why these would cross. Although there are some examples of people who are behind the scenes on all of these events. For example, Mark Kelly, astronaut, becomes a politician. His wife participates in a fake shooting. So he's been behind all these scenes. But also, on this side of the filter would be non-believers, media skeptics, auto-hoaxers, unscreened minds. So look, the only people on this side of the screen with us are the bad guys. That's absolutely the case. And the only people who are possibly going to exit the MSM plus box are the red pillars. That's it. Trutherville. The woke are married to big government. They would never leave. And the blue pillars could not be disturbed because they're comfortable. They're comfortably numb. They're happy. They're apathetic. And there's a big difference between the blue pill and those of us who don't believe. Because I'm a non-believer, and people accuse me of being too relaxed. I'm not worried. I'm not ready to run for the hills. I don't have a bug out bag. I'm not sizing up my neighbors in case I need to eat them. And I'm like, look, I'm not apathetic. I'm actually very informed, but I'm not reactive. I'm not reacting. I will not be provoked. The agitation of the woke, the agitated state of the red pill consumer, the agitation is a result of what you would call, I think it's just a reactive abuse where they're constantly triggered and triggered and triggered until they react. And then when they react, they get mocked for it. So red pill extremists are made to look crazy. Libs go crazy all the time. Well, they're being provoked, and it's all by design. And it's because they're hypersensitive to propaganda. But I can entertain ideas without believing them. I can examine without judging, and that's what skepticism is at its core, suspending judgment. But the people who exist in the box believe everything as it's happening. They think they're downloading reality and that it's organic, it's real, it's a window to the world, and it's happening right now. And it's like, no, it was written in advance. It's not really happening. If you're plugged into the 24-hour cycle, you're basically just downloading the consensus agreed upon worldview and assimilating it. You're part of the hive. Tomanoid says, my fake cat caught a fake bird and a fake bat once. Okay, let's see here. This chart, again, I'll make it available as a print. I just think it's important to point out that whenever you assert something or somebody asserts something, you have to know where they're coming from. And I can determine by someone's opinion whether they are MSM, MSM plus, and if they're a plus, if they lean left or if they lean right. And this system is perfectly split. It's split down the middle. But there is no skepticism once you cross that filter, that screen. That's where skepticism ends. And there's no internal skepticism, and it's actually a world of subjectivity. Alt reality game is a good way to explain it. Berlin on lockdown after German armed police open fire on far-left communist terrorists. Suspected far-left terrorists are being hunted by heavily armed German police this morning, plunging parts of the capital into lockdown. I only thought this was notable because lockdowns. There's so many excuses for lockdowns, and also because it's 3-3. I don't know if anything else came out of that, though. So here's an interesting website. It's pm.larc.nasa.gov. This is a website that gives you short-term contrail prediction. So for anybody who wants to still maintain a chemtrail belief, you have to argue against predictability. Your theory cannot be predicted. You don't know. Are they going to spray on Tuesday? You'll have to shrug. I don't know. Depends on if they have their chemtrail pilots ready. Depends on if that's their spray data. This is the target population. I mean, how do you determine when you're going to spray people? But if you can't predict it, but someone else can predict it, but they're predicting it on an entirely different basis, having to do with relative humidity, then maybe there's something to go with that. I would go with the predictable. And one person is like, oh, you're arguing from science. No, I'm not arguing from science as an authority. I'm arguing for the scientific method. Anybody who's against that, really question, how do you arrive at anything? We're looking at observable, repeatable, testable things that are actually understandable, and this is a well-understood phenomenon. Again, to call a chemtrail, or rather to call a cirrus cloud created by a plane a chemtrail, is akin to calling a buck rub a Bigfoot scratching. Bigfoot scratched that tree. All right, let's see what else we have here. Chesley said flurfs, which is a term of endearment that Glubers use to describe flat earthers. He says flurfs claim globe Earth is a psyop to hide God. If Earth is flat, but anyway, this person's syntax is screwed. He says, anyway, it's a psyop to discredit people who are onto the other government lies. And that's a common claim that the flat earth idea is meant to discredit people who have picked up on other things. But my point is, it's not about God, and it never was. That's always been misdirection because it seems like the flat earth movement that grew around the idea really stuck to the idea of let's go against science and cling to the Bible. And anti-science is a no-go. I don't know how they went with that. But I said the most likely explanation is they're concealing resources and land. The world we inhabit is much larger, but we're in the Truman Show zone for brainwashed tax slaves. That makes far more sense than they're, quote, hiding God. There's some deep fake porn, fear porn. Putin is poised to use AI created deep fake porn to cause chaos in the West. Some more fear porn about AI, and this time the fear porn is about deep fake porn. So they're going to use a bunch of lewd images of political figures to destroy them and somehow create chaos. I'm sorry, that might work in Russia. You put some images of some female politician out there, maybe it will chase her off the stage. But here in the West, it will probably help them. And we've had people running for Congress who had been, producing content, adult content. It's not new. So no, I'm sorry, that's not going to cause chaos in the West. It'll probably make them more popular. But, interestingly, the Taylor Swift AI generated deepfake things was a big issue just a few months ago. I'm wondering if they're going to do something with that. But is anybody even shockable here in the West? Ye West is walking around Paris with his wife now, just basically naked. Like, nobody cares. I don't think anybody even looked. I heard, I didn't look, I don't care. Like, if you want to shock people, do something novel. Like maybe she should be wearing a black clan hood, hold a leash, and then have Ye on the leash naked and drag him around Paris. Like, that would be shocking. But what they're doing right now isn't doing it. All right, let's go ahead and catch up on comments. Okay. Elephant Tusk says, more bat soup on the menu for 2024. Yeah, underheated bat soup. Remember to heat it up appropriately. And the whole bat thing, by the way, we talk about symbolism here, and someone had mentioned last night that the symbol of the phoenix was pretty prominently displayed during the Super Bowl on Usher's jacket. But the bat was actually a phoenix symbol. The Batman movie, Dark Knight Rises, you constantly saw the flaming bat. Christopher Nolan had this flaming bat sculpture. You had the bat-shaped hole in the building, looked like a 9/11 image. But the burning bat as phoenix, just like the dove or the jaybird in Hunger Games, this is a reoccurring symbol. The American eagle is a phoenix. It's a symbol of transformation, burn down, build back better. But specifically, what was the catalyst for burning down and then building back better? It was the bat. It was the symbol of that. Another one too. The raven or the crow. The movie The Crow. The guy dies, comes back from the dead. I mean, it's really interesting when you look at how often the phoenix symbol shows up. One of the earliest examples of it, I think one of the oldest, would be the dove. After the flood, which is not a fire, but everything gets wiped out, you have a reset. The people who come out of the ark. How do they know to come back to the land? The dove brings the olive branch. So the dove is also a reset symbol. And we've talked about this extensively and how common it is, and it's pretty apparent. Like Hunger Games. Do you remember when CGI Joe was elected and he had his inauguration attended by Lady Gaga, who was dressed up like something out of the Hunger Games, and she had a dove with the olive branch on her chest. But the Hunger Games has the Mockingjay with the arrow, and it's even burning like a phoenix. Same symbol. Mixing real and fake as always. Elephant Tusk says, would you sleep with a vaccinated woman? The anti-V is a controlled opposition point, and I really think it's ridiculous at this point. And they've had more than enough time to marinate in their fear porn, and they have nothing to show for it. Like, where's your pile of bodies? Okay, moving on here. I don't want to get too far into that topic because, they will ban us, but also it's not relevant anymore. Not even close. If you're still stuck on that, it's because you've been traumatized. You need to get over it. Okay, we talked about the movie Griselda. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but I'm suggesting that it's a heavy dose of feminism, girl power, girl boss, female mob boss, rampant sexism being overcome. It's pretty good though. I don't dislike it. It's brutal. However, I kind of got into this little subplot with this other character in the book Labyrinths, which I'm reading now. I may do a review on it because it seems to have a lot to do with uh, concepts of time being non-linear. But if you want to read that about the symbolism in the Netflix movie Griselda, go to timosman.blog. You can read it there. Yeah, the blood purity thing. This is all fascinating to me. Look, this is why I'm saying it's a psyop. People are split down the middle on all of these issues. But I think it's intriguing how I was like, why is Tucker Carlson calling aliens evil and dark? It's like, oh, the truth about aliens is they're dark. Like, what does that even mean? They're scary, they're dark. And then the next week, he's talking about there's a lot of immigrants, illegal immigrants from Africa and North Africans, and they're military age men. So another dark alien, scary. Like there's this theme. And I'm suggesting that this is psychological warfare. That it's about tapping into insecurities, and the right is programmed to be insecure about borders at every level. Protect your skin, don't let the needle get you. Protect your home boundary with your Second Amendment. Don't let the people from the inner cities get you. Lock your borders, seal your borders. You don't want aliens coming in and getting you. Block your skies with Space Force because the aliens are dark and evil. Extraterrestrials, don't want them coming in. And then you look at the left, and the left is like, vax me, take my guns, open my borders, and save us aliens. Completely closed, completely open. One is being targeted with insecurity, but the other one feels totally secure in the loving arms of Big Brother. It's too perfectly split down the middle to be real, which is why I stepped outside of it. Commenter says Putin and Carlson wear red Kabbalah bracelets. Carlson applied to join the CIA but failed to get the job. Make of that what you will. This is where it's at. Says Y3 is nuts. They need better scripts for Yay. Oh yeah, Yay. Well, actually, this is the script. If you look back at Black Skinhead, so Black Skinhead, which actually samples from Beautiful People by Marilyn Manson, and the Marilyn Manson connections to Yay, Metascript-wise, are intriguing and fascinating. We've talked about this before, but Black Skinhead came out in 2013 from his sixth studio album, Yeezus, spelled BLKKKSKKK head. So Black Skinhead. So he comes out with the Black Klansman hood recently, meant to shock people. But the point of it is, there's a story here in the album, and the story is about the character losing his mind, going crazy, losing everything. So there's a narrative trajectory here, and I think that's what Ye may be acting out and has been acting out. A lot of it's too perfect. Remember, they canceled the Burning Man Festival. There were 33 consecutive Burning Man festivals from 1986 to 2019. Black Rock City, Nevada, the last one, happened to also have a 33-year-old just mysteriously turn up dead. But we were noting this interesting connection between 33 and the Burning Man symbolism, and tied with the Phoenix, Christ, and Black Rock. And Ye has actually compared himself to Jesus. He's done the Jesus symbolism. He did the church during the Coachella. He's done this repeated theme, and in fact, even recently, he's compared himself to Jesus blasphemously. But that's not necessarily new. But on the date that you would have had Burning Man, and it was canceled because of COVID, Ye did the Dawn Day event where he came out burning You know, like that guy that burned himself last week. They can do this stuff with special effects. It's very easy. But Ye actually came out with the Donde album release on Fire. And again, this is on the anniversary of Burning Man. Not a coincidence. Watch Kanye set himself on fire. Very interesting timing of it. My point being, he's playing a role on the world stage, and all of his antics are too perfectly timed with the zeitgeist. And that's what the Metascript is. They're writing our history. They're painting up the zeitgeist, and you can see various theatrical events that are the focus of basically the world at that time, and they have a broader significance. The follow-up, Donde 2, happened on 2/22/2022, which we talked about at the time, and it also featured the burning house. And the point of it is, he's playing a role, but what he symbolizes is the burning of the West, as in the decadent West reaching its end. The West is about to fall. So the fall of Ye, the fall of Kanye West, is sort of a representation and a microcosm of what's happening to America. Ye, the Kardashians, the superficial or the image-based life. In fact, he even said that what destroyed his family was Hollywood values, and porn. Everything that you would attribute to the West as the reason for its downfall. So I'm suggesting that this is part of the theater. So his character losing his mind, this black skinhead, yeah, it's all a script. I don't think he's actually as insane as the media would have people think. And you know, his last birthday party, a lot of people noted they had a naked person on the table. And I just want to point out that the Satanists believe that the highest holiday of any year is your birthday, and they use nude altars, nude women as altars. Kind of interesting. I'm not saying he's a Satanist, but you know, he says he's Jesus, and you look at all these actions and his antics, and you know, what do you think? This is where it's at. Says, remember the Independence Day movie, Tim? The lefties got blew up while they were waiting on the aliens. Ironic. Yeah, actually it is. It kind of is, because if you look, the lefties are constantly embracing aliens or those from outside who would be inimical to their lifestyles, who would cancel out their values, who are in hate with the West and Western concepts of individuality, liberalism. Like, they would be the first ones to be removed. Independence Day, though, of course, Roland Emmerich. That was the movie that formed the reference point for a lot of people when they were looking for, how do I talk about what happened on 9/11? Oh, it's just like Independence Day. That's why it's interesting that Roland Emmerich put out Moonfall a couple years ago, because if 9/11 was predicted by Independence Day, meaning they put the falling building imagery in everybody's mind, the theme of the surprise attack by aliens, then you can kind of see how Roland Emmerich's Moonfall might also have some similar role in whatever comes next. And the whole movie was about the sky falling, stuff from the sky, satellites, everything from above, the atmosphere being destroyed. Okay, let's see here. Okay, let's move on here. Blackwater terrorist Eric Prince says, the brilliance of the founders will save us if no candidate gets to 270 electoral votes. The GOP House decides. Yeah, there's some discussion here about worst case scenarios. And the talk, of course, among the right is they're ready to do 1776 again.
That level of frustration where a mom or dad is going to say, I just can't wait anymore, I got to go home. When that affects the election, and there's proof of that, how ugly could it get in the States?
And if no clear candidate wins 270 electoral votes, the founding fathers are so brilliant. They thought of everything. So it goes to the House of Representatives, and the House decides. It happened before. It was John Quincy Adams versus Andrew Jackson. Nobody won the Electoral College, clearly. It went to the House.
That level of
Anyway, just a little foreshadowing of psyops to come. It's going to get very interesting. Illusion Warfare says all soldiers are actors. They just don't know it. To them, it's very real. They perceive the illusion as real. Then they participate in the illusions, thus bringing that illusion into reality. Magic with a K, bringing thought into the material, aka abracadabra. Interesting points. And it's absolutely true. This is what they do. I have this explanation for predictive programming that makes way more sense than the conventional truth or take on it. The reason for predictive programming is repetition and propaganda. If they're going to do something like a 9/11, they can only do it once. So to make it as believable as possible, to set your frame of reference, to make you suggestible, and to tell the story in its entirety the way they want it told, they tell you the story in advance. They repeat it with imagery. Your subconscious memorizes it like you're drilling for it. It's conditioning you to accept even the storyline in Independence Day. Aliens attack, the president stands up and says, "I'll save you." He's like a leader, and he saves the world. And George Bush, after 9/11, they had to take him seriously for a moment, and he was like speaking for everybody against the evil terrorists and conspiracy theorists. All right, moving on. I highly recommend you follow Illusion Warfare, Les Luthor. And I made that point earlier that the people in the military believe everything. It's designed that way. And the army of believers is what maintains the thing. When I was in the military, I have to say, I was mind controlled. I admit this. In fact, I remember I overheard someone talking, and they said something about Sergeant George was at a barbecue playing Alex Jones, and it was like this minor scandal. I'd never heard of Alex Jones. So the first thing I did is I go to the library off base to download MP3s. And I got, Bohemian Grove and some other stuff. And I'd never felt so paranoid in my life. Like downloading InfoWars MP3s while a military brainwashee, knowing it was that we weren't supposed to. They didn't just outright say it, but it was like there was a reason they were trying to keep this from everyone listening to it. But if these white pills were let out there, it would just change everything. You couldn't be a skeptic of media, non-responsive to the propaganda, not a participant in the mind war, and wholeheartedly go along with the military. It just wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't add up. All right, moving on. A lot of fascinating predictions about Trump and 4/8. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it other than to say, if nothing happens on 4/8, what happens to all of those making predictions? I think this is it. We have to draw a line. We've been criticizing people with gematria calculators making predictions about false flags. I wouldn't have a problem if they were predicting hoaxes. But they're saying it's going to get real on this date. They're doomsayers. So I'm just saying, anybody predicting the end of the world on 4/8, this is your last chance. We're not going to believe you after this. Okay, moving on. Just catching up on my Twitter feed. Again, it's IPS Inciter. David Icke says, have you noticed how many in the mainstream alternative media are changing their stance on religion or converting to it, voicing their religion more loudly? I doubt this is a coincidence. I don't have a religion. I respect those that do. Well, you do have a religion, David Icke. You do. Your religion is the worldview that you have. And your worldview, even though you're a conspiracy theorist, is a subset of the mainstream. So for him to call out mainstream alternative media, like positioning himself like he's not mainstream, is kind of a ruse. It's kind of like Baked Alaska calling Ray Epps a Fed. Okay, Fed calling a Fed to make it look like everybody around is not a Fed. But I'm noticing this is interesting as the timing of it. Here we are breaking down segments from mainstream media, alt media, and the newly formed off-world stage parallel media. That's it. But he's trying to position himself here as though he is the alternative to alternative, which he is not. He is not because he is not skeptical about the mainstream media claims, only skeptical about how they report it or who they blame. He's not an auto hoaxer. He believes every fake shooting is real, every fake terror attack is real, everything's bloody and scary, and he probably believes in chemtrails. Not knocking him. I miss the reptiles, I have to say, but I don't buy this idea of trying to frame it as, oh, mainstream alternative media, as though you're not. But Joe Rogan did say that he needs Jesus for real and we need a kingdom of
But I
God.
think as time rolls on, people are going to understand the need to have some sort of divine structure to things, some sort of belief in the sanctity of love and of truth. And a lot of that comes from religion.
I don't know where they get, what religion is he talking about? Like, seriously, what religion is he talking about where these are all facets of it? I'm serious. Like, I'm asking, does anybody know? Is it one where they throw rocks at people who break the rules and stone people? Is the one based around that grotesque human sacrifice? I just don't think we need the divine fallacy. But where is this coming from? I've seen this quite often from a lot on the right, and I think it's part of the trad right, embracing traditional values as like a surface move, really. It's just superficial. But they have to proclaim it because it's part of this dynamic. They want a great divide between progressive utopianism and transhumanism, which is their religion, scientism, and traditional right, which they're trying to lean towards, Christian nationalism. But they're making the point here of, choosing sides. And which side do you choose? Do you choose, God or government? And that's kind of the point they're making here. Who's the higher authority in your life? And again, left, their church is the mainstream media. But religion, like mainstream media, is just another way that the elite form worldview. I look at religion as old school fake news. But let's listen to a little more.
A lot of people's moral compass and the guidelines that they've used to follow to live a just and righteous life has come from religion.
Okay, now what religion is he talking about? I'm sorry. What religion is he talking about? I'm still trying to figure this out. Which religion is like making people moral and just? All it's doing is it's giving people excuses to behave like trash so they don't feel bad about it. That's all I see. And many of the people on the internet who claim to be religious, they'll say, "Oh, I'm not religious. I'm spiritual, but I believe in this." They're still asserting some level of self-righteousness, and they don't know. Let's continue.
And unfortunately, a lot of very intelligent people, they dismiss all of the positive aspects of religion because they think that the stories are mere superstitious.
Now, as far as that goes, I don't think that. The Bible isn't just a random collection of myths. It's very structured. It has the astrotheological template. It's definitely literature. It has a lot of value in that sense. It has a lot of parables, has a lot of interesting insights and wisdom. There's no reason to just throw it out. But arguing from the authority of a book assembled by the power elite that gives you a specific worldview, yeah, I'm not so much with that. But do I think it's a moral book? No, I think it has a built-in scapegoat narrative. I think it's definitely not. And it's too fluid. It's too subjective. Too many denominations. I'm not for cults or cult leader mind control. And that's what this is ultimately about. It's just as much a cult as the mainstream media. We're talking about arguments from authority. When I talk about the monolithic media, the worldview shaper, I'm talking about, basically propaganda, entertainment, education. It's all wrapped up into one to give you your worldview. But it's monolithic. And it's the worldview that's agreed upon that we can all access through the screen, the black mirror, this universal filter. But previous to mainstream or mass media, the Bibles, the religions, were the monolithic mind control devices. That's what I'm saying here. So when he's like, religions lead people to this, it's like, no, it creates a toxic dynamic, which is very much based on turning people into codependent sheeple, worshiping some narcissist on top of the stage pretending to speak for God. Like it's a very, I think, a very toxic construct. It's authoritarian. And it's based on what? Fear? Is it primarily not based on fear and insecurity? Okay, let's move on here. Klaus Schwab says if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be afraid. Here he's making the case for total transparency.
Dans ce nouveau monde, on doit accepter une transparence, et je dirais même une transparence totale. Tout va être transparent.
Everything is going to be transparent. You have to behave accordingly. Okay, you have to integrate it into your personality, and if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be afraid. Interesting. But see, it's not about not having something to hide. It's about privacy, your private thoughts are your property, intellectual property. The idea of privacy is under attack. In fact, privacy is looked at as having no value unless you commodify it and make it public, make everything intimate, out there, public. But this erosion of privacy is a long-term project, and I think it's designed to get you away from concepts of private property ownership. You will own nothing, be happy. And this is also a war again on free market capitalism. And again, owning property isn't just about land. It's owning your body, the contents of your mind. But what they've done is like, well, terrorists, now we have to grope you. So now you lose that level of privacy. You walk into the airport, you got to take off your shoes, and they grope you. So now the naked body scanner is looking at you. So you kind of lose your privacy, but you got a little security. It's a good trade-off, right? You're safe, but you've lost that level of privacy. Fast forward 19 years, C19, and now the main talk is the content of your blood, your medical history. What are you doing at the doctor's office? This is now necessary for the public to know. What is your status? So your private medical decisions are now being made public, and this is just being normalized. So the idea of what's in your blood, what's in your pockets, it's just a step deeper. And the next thing, what's in your pockets? What's in your underwear? What's in your shoes? What's in your blood? The next step is what's in your mind. Let's see your browser history. Oh, you're on the no-fly list. You went to 4chan. You might be an incel. You know what I mean? Like you might be a terrorist, whatever the designated terror threat is. But yeah, the next thing is the mind. But it's all for security. They have to check your pockets for collective security. Can't have some terrorist with a box cutter knocking down buildings. We have to check the contents of your blood. Can't have some super spreader with bat soup on his breath bringing an end to the world with another pandemic. We have to access your minds. We can't have somebody with mind viruses that might cause mentally ill people to shoot up bowling alleys. So we have to block you. So it's all about security, but they've been leading people over time to sacrifice more and more of their privacy. Get groped, get poked, and next get Neuralinked. That's probably what's next. Okay, moving on. Antichrist Denier says Rogan is foreshadowing the new one world order religion they want to establish. If you looked into the Baha'i faith, it'll be similar to that. Okay, a couple points here. One, they've already established the one world religion. It's the mainstream media. That actually is it. And that explains all the rituals, the witches' sabbats, concealed or performed under the guise of award ceremonies and sporting events. Like we already have the one world religion. And they've already brought a concept of sin. Got rid of sin. Notice, liberals don't believe in sin. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in judgment from God because that's silly. However, they believe in the replacement sin, which we dealt with in 2020. It's a construct that replaces sin, and it gives the neo-priesthood, the scientists, authority of priests to regulate the sheeple and the power to save them. So we all know about the injectable Eucharist. And the non-believers are those who don't go to church, who don't go to MSM, who don't trust the news, who don't take the Eucharist. The Protestants in this sense. So we already have the one world religion. Space is its heaven. Like we were born into it, indoctrinated with it. The archaic religions are being allowed to shrivel off and die because we've already adopted the new one. So the leftists don't believe in God, they don't believe in sin, they don't believe in judgment, yet they believe in the replacement sin. They believe in Gaia and Gaia's judgment if we don't cut back our carbon footprints, our wickedness. So they've adopted the replacement religion. And when you go into the iconography, the symbolism, you can see it is definitely a replacement religion. The modern flood myth is 100% based on the Old Testament, not based on science. So I'm not anti-science. I'm just saying that there's a point where the sciences have been turned toward the purpose of worldview formation with this neo-religion, which we're already in. But will it become something codified? I don't think so, because we'll fight over it. You will always have Muslims and Christians and Jews and atheists hating each other. But all the while, they all agree on outer space. Iran has a rocket for space. Israel's been to the moon. America, Russia. We all agree on space. We all know how to fly up in our obelisks. And the obelisk is the real symbol to note here. It's the unifying symbol that they're all basically flaunting. North Korea may not have a space program, but they're always doing these tests with their nuclear warheads. Just another stylized obelisk. Symbol of course, state power, ascension to heaven. Antichrist Denier says, very good point. Media is basically a religion, and its adherents are totally aware of their faith in it. Yeah, it's faith-based, it is a religion, and it has all the components of the religions that it has replaced. But more importantly, it has a God construct that atheists will believe in. In 2020, they turned atheists into Puritans. And it also has a devil and a concept of sin that they'll buy. And it also has a scapegoat. You know, interestingly, this is the New World Order religion. But in the Christian paradigm, the scapegoat would be Jews. Jews killed Jesus. It's kind of a reoccurring scapegoat for the world's evil. And you still see this on the trad right, especially as they lean into white nationalism. It really becomes critical Jew theory as opposed to critical race theory. But critical race theory is part of this New World Order religion. It's all coming from the left. The progressive utopian religion is replacing trad right, trad values. It's replacing it. And that's kind of what we're, living through right now. The swapping out of one for the other. But my point of it is, it's the left. Their version is going to trump the old version because theirs has a basis in science, and theirs doesn't just pray about heaven. They can eventually take you there on their flying obelisks. But every aspect of the religion has been updated, and it's been surreptitious. And something else that I find intriguing here too is how even the symbolism is the same. Like they haven't really changed it all that much. The dynamics haven't changed either. You replace a Bible with a TV. And then the dynamic between believers and non-believers is also intriguing. Like here's something that's interesting, is the right is always in a state of moral panic because they're worried about sin. They call it social contagion. You can catch it. That's why they're always freaking out about the pride marches and the provocations of the left who are deliberately provoking them. Similarly, the right don't believe in the left's version of sin, and they reject the treatment for it, which makes them dangerous to the left. So the left is like, we got to quarantine against these misinformationists and anti-Vs because they will kill us, right? So it's like heretics or heathens or people who won't be saved. But on the other side, the right's like, you got to stay away from them because they will take you to hell and because they're evil and the deep state stuff. And one more point. The Mars program is part of this utopian scheme. And the whole idea of Musk has recently been talking about sending 1 million people to Mars. They're convincing people that Mars is the way to do it, and they can perfect it there, and then we can bring that down to Earth. So I've been thinking about this. The Russian space pioneers were all about space communism. There's a book from 1908 called Red Star about a Russian communist base on Mars where they perfect the system. And then some scientists from Earth go there and they decide, let's implement this on Earth. So what I'm thinking, they will fake Mars. It's probably going to be faked in a domed, underground, total recall-like place beneath China or something, where 1 million Americans will go hyperloop, which will feel like space travel. They'll go hyperlooping over to China, where they will farm potatoes and possibly work off some of America's debt, thinking they're on Mars, but they're underneath China. And they won't know because Mars needs to be terraformed before we can go to the surface. So they could easily fake it there for an entire generation. And once they perfect communism there, they'll say, hey, you guys on Earth, why aren't you living like this? Why aren't you living sustainably? And that's the whole point. And this is not a new idea. They've been programming this for generations. I mean, I talked about how in 2017, Jeff Bezos said that Earth is going to have to become a civilization of stasis if it's going to survive. And if you want freedom and liberty, you're going to have to go to space. Okay, let's see what else we have here. N.A. Literalist said, a lot are going to die with rockets towards Mars. Now that's an interesting point here, and I thought about this too. They could easily just put people in rockets, rich people. We're talking about rich. You have 250K, you can buy a seat to Mars, maybe. He did actually say a few years ago, Elon Musk had suggested that if you can't pay for your ticket to Mars, you could work it off on Mars. This is actually Elon Musk's sci-fi futurism is just plutocracy with space travel. In a now infamous tweet, Musk wrote of importing indentured servants to Mars who would work on the red planet to pay off the cost of transport. Less utopia, more Dubai in space, unlike the sci-fi writers he supposedly adores. Indentured servitude in space. But he could easily send people out into the ocean, just crash the rockets or blow them up in space, send them to the sun. It wouldn't matter because they could use AI and replace every single person with a simulation. And we're just looking at a CGI movie. Oh, look, these are our friends on Mars. But no, these are some rich people who had their bank accounts drained and then they got mass cremated on their way to their space paradise. But nobody knows. That's diabolical, but this is the guy who's going to Neuralink us. Doesn't seem like it's that far out of reach. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Quite a lot going on. Next, Autohoaxology 101 shipment. That's this week. I'm getting the books this week, paperback version of Autohoaxology 101. I'm going to put it on Amazon as well, and we're going to kick off the promotion. And it's going to begin here. I have plans to do basically book readings, discussions, among other things to promote. It's not just about selling the book because it's not a mainstreamable book, but it's about getting this codification of repurposed skepticism directed towards media in the hands of about 10,000 people, which I think we can do. The Unmediated Mind says the Chinese underground is possibly the only place you could perfect communism, specifically the Chinese sewers, where they get the gutter grease they sell to tourists as soup. Antichrist Denier says real communism has never been tried before. We have to simulate a Mars colony to be absolutely sure of its viability. Yep, they would agree with that. And I'm fine. Hey, if you're a communist, go to Mars. I've been saying this for some time. You're a greenie, you're a communist, you're a utopian. Even if you're a white nationalist separatist, one of these annoying neo-Nazis, just go do your thing. Why haven't they thought about Mars? The white nationalist types, the neo-Nazis types, the racial purist types, go to Mars and do your thing. But my point here, I guess, really is that they never go and do their thing. They want everybody else to do it. You know, like the people who like, you got to go off the grid, and you never stop hearing about them. Like, when are you going to go off the grid already? Show us that it works. Come back in 10 years. Imagine if, like, Alex Jones had said, you know what? I'm going to run for the hills. The world's going to end, in 2008. But no, they never leave. They want everybody else to leave too. Well, if you convince everybody it's a good idea to run for the hills and everybody runs for the hills, then what? We're all in the hills. We just basically moved up the street. I mean, you didn't change anything. Running for the hills is only viable if only a few people do it, so you shouldn't even be talking about it. It's more like convince everybody to run for the hills and you just stay home. Like, I'm going to stay. Everybody else run for the hills, I'm going to stay, and I'll just find what I can in everybody's refrigerators. Lean Dion says, what about Chaz or Chop? That was the Utopia. Yeah, you're right. We gave him a chance. Chazistan. I'd like to know if there's any unreleased footage from Chazistan. Do they devolve into cannibalism? My favorite thing was the garden. Like, oh, this garden is for non-whites. They have these phrases like, it's for they're all their codes, basically. But it was a segregated garden, a white section and a non-white section. And then some guy took down the fence. He said it's speciesist. If a cow wants to walk across, it needs to be able to. Fences are speciesist, which means racist against animals. So they took down the fence around the farm that was going to feed Chazistan, and then some individual with like a broom handle started doing ninja moves on it all day, and he killed the crops. So I assumed that they were going to starve, and they had to shut it down. But that was their best chance. They had a chance, and they kind of screwed the pooch. Antichrist Denier says both sides must proselytize. They'll never be happy until everyone has the same political ideology. Awful snare to be stuck in. Yes, it's the political horseshoe. It's not a circle. Far left, far right never actually meet, but they get very close. They become distorted mirror, like a mirror of each other. Left and right, woke and red pill. But it's a horseshoe. And what they're fighting over is the red pill, they're not trying to convert the woke. And the woke are not trying to convert the red pillars. They're both trying to wake up the blue pill community and get them to join their side. That's what they're fighting over. And the blue pills don't care. So the fake woke and the falsely awakened red pill think they can wake up the blue pill to go deeper into the matrix. Hey, come try some of our MSM Plus. Get more propaganda, more agitated, less certain about the future, more insecure. And that is their model here. Anybody who doesn't go with the flow, who naturally finds because of their own intuition or whatever it is, they find that they're not satisfied with what they've been told. So they look deeper and they fall deeper into the trap. And they spend their time trying to convert. Someone says stop talking pills. Well, we're talking ideology here. And mainstream plus are both deep in this thing. And they're forced to basically compete over who can win the most people to their side. But they never get beyond the political horseshoe. And they never will. It's an unwinnable game. All right, let's see here. I actually reported Timcast for a couple of tweets just to test something, and they got back to me. After reviewing the available information, we want to let you know that Timcast hasn't broken our safety rules. Twitter just got back to me. I don't know what tweet I reported. Anyway, this has been great. I'm going to open phones tomorrow. We would have done phones tonight, but I'm behind on a couple of things. I'll be paying the phone bill here shortly. And then also, we're going to be doing the live Discord. So if you want to chat on Discord, just go to ips.monster, sign up for the newsletter. Alice in Chains says, off topic, but can I ask your opinion on the official world's population? Yeah, here's another one of those things where the left and the right agree there's a population crisis. They both agree. It's a crisis. The left says there's too many people. The right says we're running out of people. So who's right here? They both agree there's a population crisis, but they differ on what the crisis actually is. And this is typical. That's why I call it a bifurcated psyop. Split down the middle, choose which side you want to believe on. I don't think there's a population crisis. And the people who think that we're running out of people are like hey, there's not enough people. We're being depopulated. And then the WEF opens the borders and sends in 20 million illegal immigrants. And it's like, here's 20 million people. You guys are running out, right? And they're like, oh no, stop the invasion. Well, what is it? Do you want more people coming in, or do you want to stop them from coming in, even though you think you're being depopulated? You see what I mean? It's not really coherent. All right, I'm going to send out archives later tonight, including the conversation I had with Fakeologist. So if you're here for that, I was on the main channel, but I had to pull it. We didn't talk about anything off limits, but after I got off the phone, he advertised a website, and it was like all shots clot, and it had a vax needle. And I'm like, even that. Mazel says birth rates are down, we're overpopulated, which is it? Oh yeah, and what's more, they say that the illegal immigrants that are coming have a higher birth rate. Okay, well, you're worried about birth rates going down. You're worried about depopulation. Now you have a very fertile group coming in, and you're like against it. But, it's all about fear. It's about insecurity. And it's about Psy-War, which I don't participate in. And I'm looking forward to the rest of this year, because the people who are brought into the circus for the election are going to do away with all their skepticism, and they're going to become emotional, hive-minded bots, and they're just like sheeple. And this is good, because the more people run for the voting booths, the more of a distance there will be between those reality compromised people and those of us who are taking a stance of skepticism. And it's just going to be the next 9 months or so. I think that it's just going to take that long. Over the next few months, as this happens, this separation, I think we'll be able to do what I'm planning on doing, which is, of course, quarantining a sizable chunk of media skeptics, and then deciding what to do from there. And my objective is 10,000. I do think there's much larger groups of people than that. Like in, Trutherville is huge, but it's scattered, as in its ideas are scattered, they're not uniform, there's no internal skepticism, it's very subjective. But within that, there are definitely a lot of people who are up against certain guardrails, and you take those guardrails out, they will fall off the edge, and they won't go back. Once you reverse engineer a psyop, you don't fall for it again. And the biggest hurdle for many is recognizing the role of mostly movie magic and what I call news bending. The real meaning of predictive programming makes it all very clear. Elephant Tusk says they want a drone class and immigrants are easily controlled. The left says the immigrants are a net gain on the economy and they're working age men. The right says they're invaders and they're military age men. It's fascinating how they are able to have these two different interpretations. But nobody cares about the immigrant issue unless it's an election year. And it's the same story every year. And whenever there's some doomsday scenario or a psyop with a worst case scenario that never comes true, I tend to think it's not going to come true. 2015, Save the Children, never happened. What happened to those children? Well, they're going to vote Democrat now. Obama running for office, and all the talk is about military age men coming across the border. What happened with them? They're now retirement age men. And they are probably voting Democrat, but does that even matter? Like, at this point, the fact that they faked the moon landing isn't just some trivia. It's not a minor detail. And it's easy to dismiss it, to mock it, or to have it marginalized. But that alone should reframe everybody's perspective on the world. But there isn't a platform for total objectivity. The default is go with the reactionary, red pill, anti-media talking point influencers and fight the fight with them, join them. But they're controlled opposition because they're inside the box. We are trying to get a sizable demographic outside of the box entirely. Nobody else is doing it. Nobody will do it. They're not allowed to do it. They're contractually obligated to uphold the establishment approved designated real, the official BS. and there isn't a sizable chunk organized yet. And this is once we start this, it's past the point of no return. Once we get a certain number, there's no telling what it will do. We may be ground zero for this mind virus pandemic. I've been describing it lately actually as more of a comet or an asteroid, like Apophis 44492 planet killer that's going to hit us on Friday the 13th in April of 2029. Yeah, autohoaxology is a planet killer if it's done right. And the planet it's going to kill is the worldview construct. It has a lot of potential to do significant disruption immediately. It may not even spread like a pandemic. Brandon says, Illusion of Choice 2024. Well, I considered voting for Joe Biden, and I might still, just to prove to everyone here that I don't believe in the system, that I think it's useless. But I'll do it also because I want to show that I'm not going to knee-jerk go with the flow, because the conspiracy realm, Trutherville, has been appropriated by the GOP, and I think that's a problem. And that started with Trump. Good job. It was really sneaky. Did all the right things, dog whistled, Q, and they hooked all these conspiracy theorists in with the idea that, yeah, you're right. Everything is a conspiracy, but we're going to declass everything. Antichrist Denier says Fetterman 2024. Yeah, I would vote for Ashton Kutcher. Have you seen the comparison? If you put Ashton Kutcher in a bald cap, you pretty much got him. They even cry the same in front of Congress. And Fetterman is a big crier. But yeah, I think Fetterman might be kind of a deep fake, and it might actually be Ashton Kutcher. All right, this has been fun. This is AutoHoaxer GTFO Chief Crow. Check your inbox for archives. Those will be going out probably late tonight / early tomorrow. And we'll be doing our IPS Discord think tank chat tomorrow to kick off March. Tomorrow's, by the way, it's March 4th. March 4th, which is the date that the Batman movie came out. And I had predicted before it came out, I said it's going to be March 4th, right-wing terrorists. And that is another example here of concurrent programming. The day the Batman movie came out, Joker, as in Joker Sarnoff, the Boston bomber, had his death penalty reinstated. Like, there's always been these fascinating connections between the Batman franchise and some of these high-profile psychological operations. Anyway, this has been great, and Antichrist Denier says he's going to compare the two. Yeah, if you have any good mashups of Fetterman and Ashton Kutcher, share them in our Discord, and I will post them. Dinosaur says March 4th, what? March for Our Lives. Well, March is when they launch a lot of these movements, and March for Our Lives, they called it a children's crusade because the children weren't old enough to vote away the conditions that was making their life so dangerous. But I'm like, March for Our Lives, what about run? More of you will make it out if you run. Anyway, this has been great. We'll see you all later. This is Chief Crow. I'll put a link in the chat.